Jenny Claffey. Good morning to you, Jenny.
Good morning, guys.
Clunkier than expected intro into this item. How are you keeping?
Yeah, very well, thanks.
You've given out to us here in the ads. That was why I had to take the earpiece out. I was getting the ear chewed off me for not for the tennis racket disappearing from the set.
Yeah, dead right. Where are they?
We'll have to get on to Mick, the producer. French Open is getting down to the crunch round, so that's what we're actually here to discuss.
Yes.
And the finalists have been decided. The second seed Arena Sabalenka dumped out last night. Long game, tight game, but deserved. Did you feel in the end for Muchova to make the final?
I mean, it was a pretty disappointing watch at the end of that match there yesterday for Sabalenka. 5-2 up in the third set with a match point. Seemed to be totally in control of the match, and then from there just imploded totally. Yeah. It was really surprising. Having the amazing season that she's had this year, having won the Australian Open, and seemed to have kind of batted those demons down from the past. But it was a bit of a shocking result. I mean, Muchova won 20 of the last 24 points of the match, and it was just a complete and utter disaster for Sabalenka.
Funny how a player can be in such form and then get to match point and so dominant and then just capitulate. Like, it's obviously psychological at that point.
At that point, yeah, for sure. Yeah, like, I mean, the actual match point itself, Muchova played a great point, a good serve, and hit a winner, and then from there it just almost looked like the fight had gone from Sabalenka. Like, her body language went a little bit more, you could see it in her body language. I mean, she just had head dropped a little bit, and then what happens with Sabalenka is she has plan A, and then if plan A doesn't work, she tries to play plan A plus, and she starts over trying, and she just made so many mistakes, which we would have seen in previous years, and that's what took her a few years to get to this stage that she's at now in her career with so much success, is that she would play and over try and make so many mistakes because her game is so powerful. But it's disappointing to see that creep in there yesterday.
Well, even on the success, so she's never made it to a Paris final. She's obviously the Australian Open winner from early in the year, so she's kind of been there and kind of done it.
Yeah.
But in the Paris sense, obviously she's not been able to get over that hurdle. When Shane asked you there, was that mental thing, you said yes, definitely, and then you said, but it was a really good point from Muchova. So where is the actual truth of that? Because I think that a lot of people will be looking on going, is this becoming a thing for her now?
Well, sorry, what I mean by the match point was, like, there was nothing that Sabalenka could have done as such at that stage, but thereafter it looked as though she just imploded mentally. And even by her response after the match, she wasn't admitting it to it, but I think that we will hear in coming days that she will probably put it down to that something changed in her mindset.
What will that mean for her going forward? Like, because it's not it's not that the Australian Open was an outlier in the sense that, like, she has made semi-finals of other Grand Slam tournaments, but it's not like she's got this long track record of winning in crunch games, and that's a high profile moment, whereas you say maybe the moment itself was not the thing, but the stuff that followed was the thing, which is nearly even more of a concern mentally for her.
Yeah, and that's what's going to sting for her, is going to be the fact that she wasn't able to turn it around, having still been 5-2 up, had a match point, 5-3 up serving for it. That it was the snowball then from thereafter. Like, how do you manage that as a player after? She's going to be obviously hugely bereft over the next few days and very disappointed, but you're going to have to, I mean, that's where champions are made. You're going to have to find that way to turn that around and fuel that now going forward. Like you said, like, she's never made it past the third round in Roland Garros, but this year she has shown some great form, winning 2 tournaments. She won, and she also won the Australian Open, her maiden slam, and I think people were expecting bigger things for her. She was also playing yesterday for the number 1 ranking. I think if Swiatek hadn't won, or there was some kind of formulation that she was playing for the number 1 in the world, and maybe all these things are playing on her mind as well. You hope not in those kind of moments, but yeah, it was a shocking end to the match.
And what about for Muchova then? She's been around for a while. She's had major injury issues. She was told, was it last year, she was told that she may not play tennis at that level again, and suddenly she's here. She's 26, which is not a spring chicken, I suppose, when it comes to tennis. It's like a fleeting enough kind of career. What are your expectations from her?
Well, we've been kind of talking, like, her name has been mentioned in the mix a few years ago. Kind of, she had a good season in 2019. She made the Australian Open, I think, semi-final, and beat some really good players. Like, she's 5-0 against top 3 players. Like, so she's had some great wins in her career, but injury, she's been plagued with injury, and as you said, last year having that almost career-ending injury. But I mean, you just, if she can get a run of form this tournament, who knows what she can perform in the grass, or can produce in the grass season and then in the hardcourt. You'd like to see that it's not just a fleeting moment for her, but coming into the final on Saturday, I see Swiatek taking this fairly handily.
It's hard to make a case against, isn't it? Like, and as you say, the world number 1 is sort of tied up. She's overwhelming favourite, it seems, and yet to lose a set in France. I kind of was thinking about it last night and sort of had the same view as I have about the Champions League final, in that like I just kind of I think everybody expects it to go one direction.
Yeah, and that's almost disappointing, because
it is a little bit.
Yeah, you go into the final and we kind of know that Swiatek is going to win that. I mean, it would have been a spicy final between Sabalenka and Swiatek, because Sabalenka has actually challenged Swiatek this year. She's beaten her twice, so there's a bit of a rivalry going on there. And as I said, I think they're playing for the number one ranking and all that. So it would have been great to see that. So I mean, I think it's pretty one-sided in Swiatek's favour.
Interesting to see her beat the Brazilian, first Brazilian to make a Grand Slam women's semi-final since 1968. I read somewhere. So like, it's good to see different countries that aren't usually represented in Grand Slams represented, because clearly the interest spikes in countries as a result.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and Brazil isn't exactly, they're not necessarily known for their tennis, except for Gustavo Kuerten. He won it, I think 26 years ago. He won the on the men's side, and since then they haven't produced any really top 20 players. And she's a super player. I did admire. She had a great season last year at the start of the season, and then fell apart in the grass season as well. She won a few tournaments last year on clay. Amazing ball striker. I was watching that match there yesterday with Swiatek. She really challenged Swiatek. That was the first time she'd been pushed this tournament, Swiatek, by Haddad Mayer. She just plays this lefty, very powerful game, has an amazing attitude. Like, I mean, if anyone's watching, she's a super player to aspire to be like on the court. She's so positive, has great attitude. So you just hope again, like, you know, that she can emulate that now going forward.
Well, Adrian's point there, but the I guess the age of a tennis player, the perfect age for a tennis player. Like what like Swiatek's only 22. So like, what's the? I know it changes person to person and player to player in terms of their body, but what is the general rough prime age for a tennis player?
They say that your athletic ability, like your best athletic ability, is when you're kind of in your later 20s.
Right. Tennis players tend to get burned out a bit quicker though.
Well, that's true, especially when they start, and if you've played from juniors, like underage, all the way through. But then again, let's look at the men's semi-final today. Alcaraz is 20 and Djokovic 36, both in their prime. Well, their prime, if you can say that for Djokovic. But you know, what is the best? I mean, physiologically, I think it's in your kind of your mid to late 20s is where you've developed, and But again, in tennis, it seems to be now that the players are a lot younger. Again, there was a bit of it used to be like when I was a kid, when I was like, 12, 13, 14, a lot of the younger, like Russian players, like 17, 18, they were dominating the game then. And then we obviously saw the big three in the men's game. So we followed them through the years and as they got older. So it was kind of hard to make that decision. Is it 19, 20, is it 30? But we'll see anyway today in the men's semis.
So talk to us about that Djokovic against Alcaraz, and it was probably the game that everybody kind of wanted to see at some point. And Djokovic, with the record that he has in Paris, the form that we see of Alcaraz, the fact that they don't often meet, the fact that the number one ranking is on the line, like, it's just set up so well.
This is going to be popcorn tennis. Like, this is the most highly anticipated match of the tournament. I think once the draw came out, everyone was hoping for an Alcaraz Djokovic semi-final. It would have been ideal if they were playing in the final, but it's going to be, I think, a really, really exciting match. Both players, he said, gunning for different goals. Djokovic, this is his 45th Grand Slam semi-final, and it's only Alcaraz's second. Right, however, Alcaraz is the in-form player at the moment. Everyone's talking about him. If you look at it on paper, Djokovic, obviously, if you look at this season, for example, he hasn't had the best clay seasons, probably one of his worst clay seasons coming into Roland Garros. He's had a niggling injury. Okay, yes, granted, he won the Australian Open and he won the tournament before that, but then we've been it's all talk about Alcaraz this season. However, then when we look at those stats, like Djokovic's 45th Grand Slam, it's only his second.
Crazy.
It's crazy. And Djokovic is going for his 23rd Grand Slam, and Alcaraz is going for his second.
When you look at that, you just think there's no debate, but there is.
Yeah, but it's Djokovic. We just cannot. We can never count out Djokovic, and I think there's a few exterior motives as well for him. Like for example, he's going for the number one ranking, as we said, but also he's going to try and break Nadal's 22 all-time Grand Slam. They're both on 22, and what a better way for Djokovic, in his eyes, to do it than to do it in Nadal's house. If he was to win against Alcaraz and then win the French Open, he would be knocking Nadal off his 22 perch on his.
Not in your eyes, is that what you're saying, or am I reading too much into that?
Maybe. Yeah.
I wonder as well, like Kachanov gave Djokovic a bit of a scare early in the tournament, like nearly going 2 sets behind. Say nearly, Djokovic came through the match ultimately, but sometimes like a player like Djokovic nearly needs that in an earlier round to get the rocket up their ass.
Yeah, definitely. And as the tournament progresses and it gets deeper into the tournament, Djokovic starts finding his form more and more, and this is where he thrives, is these quarterfinals, semi-finals, those big stages. But Hakanov, I think Djokovic started off quite sluggish in that match. He was a little bit he didn't really seem to have his form, and then once the tiebreaker came, he just absolutely annihilated him 7-0. He didn't make a single mistake. And again, like that, Djokovic comes alive in these big moments, and we're going to expect to see that today. Like there's going to be no pushover in Djokovic today, and again in those matches like the Hakanov one where he won the tiebreaker, you just see like those moments. Like in the previous rounds as well, he had 5 tiebreakers. He's won all 5 tiebreakers fairly easily. It's just like this man in those moments. It's just
so
superhuman.
It sounds like you're saying that Swiatek is going to that's done. That conversation is over. What's the makeup of the men's final going to be, and who's going to win it?
Well, firstly, looking at the semi-final, I do feel like the winner of today's semi-final between Alcaraz and Djokovic will ultimately be the winner. The other semi-final between Zverev and Ruud is almost just it's been completely forgotten about. I think it could be I want to say Alcaraz today in 5 sets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think Zverev will come through on the other side.
And plenty of emotion for him as well, given what happened to him last year, and a bit of redemption. And
great to see him back though a year later.
Given the circumstances, all right.
Interesting. Tsitsipas talking after the Alcaraz game about how he felt sluggish. He'd been taking, I guess it depends on who's putting the nighttime game, the late match, but like he was taking sleeping pills and he was taking naps during the day, and he said he just wanted to test that to see if it helped him, and he said it had the complete opposite effect. Felt completely sluggish. But I'd say that must be a difficult thing for tennis players. Depending on where you are in the schedule and the time you start, you just have to completely do different things with your body. Clearly the sleeping pills and the naps didn't work.
No, not for him. He was blaming the melatonin and losing that match. Yeah, I mean the scheduling plays a huge part. In France or in Paris in the French Open, they don't schedule those matches too late because there's only one night match now. So that to avoid that issue, because all the other Grand Slams other than Wimbledon play night matches, and they have 2 matches. So then if you look back at the Australian Open, I don't remember Andy Murray, he played that match till 4:30 in the morning, and then had was back on in the next day about 8 hours later, and then was playing the next day. Like that was him done. He played a 5-set match, and that has a huge impact when if they're playing those night matches, but then they generally schedule them later on, 2 days later, to give them the best chance to recover. But it does make a difference, absolutely. Like that's a huge part of it. And you see that's why Alcaraz and Djokovic are playing first today, because the other guys played the later match 2 days ago.
Now that's all the less serious stuff out of the way. A couple of months ago I got onto our series producer, if we could call him that, Colin Buhig, to say I've been down in Bushy Park and I'm seeing this new craze and we have to get on it. When are you free to come down and have a game of paddle? And I got on to Bushy Park Tennis Club, whatever they're called, and that has all gone cold anyway. I need to reinvigorate. But then I suddenly discovered that your international tennis career racket career is back on track.
So
what's happening?
So I'm heading to the European Games in a week and a half.
How long have you been playing? A lot of people watching won't have a clue what we're talking about, so let's establish.
Is this the same as pickleball, or is it?
No, different. So pickleball is like paddleball is almost paddle is the equivalent of like pickleball. Pickleball is huge in the States. Paddle is massive in Europe, although now paddle is the fastest growing sport in the world. Right. It's a mixture of tennis and squash, so it's played in like a glass enclosure, and you can use the back wall, so the ball just has to bounce before it hits the back wall. You have to have doubles,
is that right?
Yeah, it's only doubles. And it's played with this smaller racket with kind of like this big head, and the tennis balls are less pressurized than tennis balls.
So there's a dead or hit off it, like
and it's the same scoring as tennis, scoring system as tennis. Other than that, there's pretty much no.
Is it harder than tennis?
I'm learning that it's not the same as tennis anyway, because when I first started playing paddle, I was basically just a tennis player on the paddle court, and in time I'm realising that's actually not helpful to be really powerful and everything, because the ball just hits back off the wall and gives them the advantage. So learning the techniques and stuff has been frustrating because you think I'll just throw another racket in my hand, it'll be the same thing, but it's a really great sport. It's really quick, like fast paced, and it's very tactical as well, so I'm really enjoying the learning process.
Jenny's one of these annoying people, like plays a rugby sevens, soccer, fucking everything. Like regardless of the sport, just pick it up, and he's good at it.
So the Euros coming up.
Yes, the European Games are on in Krakow in a week and a half's time. So heading over there. So really excited. Yeah,
that's brilliant.
So yeah, this is my new thing.
Yeah, unreal. We'll check in before.
My third attempt at trying to get to the Olympics now. So third different sport trying to get to.
It's in the Olympics. Obviously.
Not next year. They're trying to get it in for 2028. It's definitely.
Where would that leave you in terms of the conversation we were having earlier
about the age? Let's not go there.
in your prime.
Yes, exactly. This is it. Never give up on your dreams.
I'm okay with that. So now that we're on air, I can say that if I get Bowie interested again and corral somebody else, you're going to show us what to do if we go down to Bushy Park someday.
Definitely. I'll absolutely take you on.
I had to start Googling or YouTubing, like, how do you actually play this game?
I think Colin will fancy his chances better with paddle maybe than tennis.
Shots fired. I'm sure we'll catch up with you next week. Thanks a lot for coming in.
Thanks, guys.